There are a few characters in the Yakuza series that fans will always— Fuck it, dude. Man, I had a whole intro thing planned out for this, but you and I have been waiting for more than long enough. So, let's just get down to it. In this video, the second of two parts, we're gonna close out the newcomers in Yakuza 4 with the fan favorite. Tanimura was Kiryu's technique, and Saejima Kiryu's strength, which leaves only his speed. But honestly, that's underselling what this dude brought to the series. You guys know me, I'm the guy that loves Yakuza 3 like life itself, but even I have to admit that while that game introduced bounding and the resulting combos, it wasn't until Yakuza 4 that the series would make the most of that system. And it was mostly thanks to this guy. The mysterious owner of Sky Finance, the washed-up porn star himself, the man who fell in love with a desk, Shun Akiyama. It's style rank, by the way. We're doing style rank. I was in such a rush, I forgot to introduce everything. Now, much like last time, I believe I should get his story significance out of the way early. Thankfully, there isn't quite as much to discuss with Akiyama, especially since I've gotten the heavier work of explaining how the game builds up to Kiryu and the use of tests as a theme and driving force in the narrative, but there are still plenty of things worth going over. First off, his avatar, the vermilion bird. Not a phoenix, there is a difference, although he does borrow symbolically from both. The phoenix, being the king of the birds, represents auspiciousness and benevolence, easily seen in Akiyama's vast wealth and willingness to throw it away for anyone who he feels deserves it. The vermilion bird, on the other hand, represents passion and ambition. Now, we need to look a little deeper into the story to see this come into play, but it very much does. Remember, Akiyama is constantly considering how Kamurocho is in need of a new proverbial leader to take his place at the top of the underworld. He doesn't see this in himself, though, instead preferring to place his trust in men like Kido and Arai, who hold the most potential according to his judgment. However, as he learns through the game, his judgment is neither as perfect nor as reliable as he would like it to be, and thus he must take action himself to ensure the future he wants to see for the city that saved his life. Even without considering the ambition side of things, Akiyama is a man of romantic passion, to some fans' ire. I don't hold the same disdain for Lily as others, despite the fact that she is horribly underdeveloped and exits the story in about as clunky a way as she repeatedly enters it, mostly because it allows us to see a side of Akiyama that most other protagonists in the series haven't gotten to contend with. His infatuation with the idea of a femme fatale pairs well with his love of mystery and unquenchable need to insert himself into other people's lives. This makes him something of a neo-noir detective figure, meaning he is his own Date, in a sense. This hurts him all the more when he realizes his deductive reasoning is about as sharp as his ability to sense a person's true character, and thus, twofold, Akiyama is forced out of his passive role in life and must play an active role in the story he wants to simply observe. In general, Akiyama is a character who learns to be the change he wants to see in the world, and moreover, he learns that you can't be that change just by giving someone else the tools you think they can use to fix their situation. Just like his idol Kiryu, whose life also changed forever in December of 2005, he spends 5 years after the fact running away from this reality. And just as Kiryu accepts his responsibility and returns to the city that has destroyed him and been destroyed by him with the hopes of fixing it for good, Akiyama pulls a class betrayal along with Tanimura and actually does something to help the single father of 9 and his weird fugitive friend. But remember guys, Yakuza isn't political, let's not get it twisted. Anyway, on to design. Akiyama is adorned in a muted red coat to suit his passive status in life that he must abandon. It's worn over a black dress shirt, slacks, and shoes, accompanied by a gold watch and a gold pendant, worn in an effort to spite those who believe in a gold standard, which is also why all of his assets are stored in the form of liquid fucking bills hidden behind a bookshelf. I wonder if this guy has a problem with banks or something. That's really weird. Naturally, his outfit signifies his elevated financial status, but above all that, literally, is another long and relaxed head of hair. Not to the extent of Saejima, of course, but there's not even a business in the front to hide the party everywhere else with Akiyama. He wears his laziness on his sleeve and leaves it piled everywhere else in his office to boot. Yet another sign of his passive status before the events of Yakuza 4. He lets his problems pile up around him because he has money, and if he really wanted to, he could fix them easily. He just doesn't. But he totally could, promise. If we're talking about that hands-off mentality, though, there's no better example than his fighting style. Akiyama is a Taekwondo practitioner, a martial art that I also used to study, as I've mentioned before. Having reached a first degree black belt, the lowest degree, for clarity's sake, I am proud to say that I actually do have a somewhat fundamental understanding of what all's going on in his kit here. Taekwondo isn't some kicking-only art, far from it. There's plenty of chops and elbows and more conventional strikes that you can use, but of course, the standout is the kicks. Front kicks, side kicks, push kicks, roundhouses, hooks, axes, orbitals, although that last one might just be a thing from Tekken. If there's a kick, he probably uses it. He even does a little flamingo stance work for as little as it contributes to his kit. If you're looking for a direct Virtua Fighter comparison, my best guess would be Sarah Bryant, but that's mostly for the flamingo thing. Aside from that, it's just that they use similar styles, not necessarily that they have the same moves. Even then, Sarah has some good cash throws she can work with, while Akiyama is more focused on the strike game. Alright, bullshit over. Speedstar time. It's the part where I talk about Speedstar. Genuine contender for the best street battle theme in the game right here. Not to mention one of the biggest components that adds to how great the first chapter of Yakuza 4 is. The synth melody is solid, of course, and the individual instrumental elements, which are dashed along the track, give it a lot of character. The flute lick that makes regular appearances, the piano hits that pop up in the middle of the first segment, the keyboard solo that steals the show before even a minute passes. But for my money, the most important part of this track is the guitar. Not its presence, but the lack of it, only showing up halfway through the song to stand under the melody and enhance its power. Much like how 4 years prior, RGG would compose an energetic lounge piece with jazzy flair to accompany combat in Sotenbori, which stood in complete opposite to the grungier, heavier rock piece for Kamurocho, Speedstar's strength lies in how far removed it is from the general conventions of the series' soundtracks up to now. It's lighter than air, flows like water, but still retains a solid foundation that drives the track forward to match the pace of combat. My only wish is that it would match the BPM of Akiyama's extended kick combo, but alas, we have to settle for greatness instead of perfection. Speaking of greatness and kicks, let's move on now to the combat, because for as distinct as Akiyama has come off in this regard, this is where we start to see stuff that we're a little more used to. Being the first playable character in the game, Akiyama naturally needed an intuitive combat style that was simple to grasp but clearly showed potential for where it would go later on. That means he doesn't have any weird gimmicks to his base kit, no charged finishers, no special dodge or guard move, no extra nuance with his heat bar. He is finely crafted and distilled Yakuza combat, which means that a lot of what he has to work with will be covered in this section. The utility behind these moves will come later. Starting simple, Akiyama's stance greatly resembles Kiryu's, just with open hands instead of closed ones. He won't be using them very much, even as guard sees him bringing up a leg to help defend center mass, but they will see some light use in various places. And I do mean light. The instances of it are rare enough to the point that I'll make it extra clear when they arise. Anyway, his combo also resembles Kiryu to start with, opening with a kick with the left leg just as Kiryu opens with a left jab, then a right. But then things diverge. The third kick is an axe kick down from where the second kick ended. Then, just as Kiryu's fourth light strike was originally a combo extending kick, Akiyama also changes things here by not using one, but 4 combo extending slash kicks, which can be upgraded to extend the combo even further. This isn't useful for much besides damage, but it does help sell Akiyama as a master of his craft. Now for the finishers. Square triangle is a hook kick to center mass, which inflicts crumple. Easily followed up on with basically any move, and not having to work as hard to get a move that crumples the enemy speaks to Akiyama's privilege compared to the other protagonists. Even in combat, he's got it easier. 2 square triangle is an orbital kick, which again might just be a thing in Tekken, but either way, it's an accurate description of the kick, and it knocks the enemy flat. 3 square triangle is a spinning side kick that launches the enemy away. If you want to follow up on this, you'll need to be quick on your feet, but if you're fine staying where you are, it's also one of his stance moves, so use the chance to swag on your enemies and gain some heat for it. 4 square and every following square leads to the same finisher, a launching kick that can also be held to gain heat. Outside of the base combo, he's pretty standard, save for a few minor differences. He has double finishers, but their effects are ultimately negligible compared to what the base finishers do. None of them crumple, and only 4 square 2 triangle launches in a way that's notably different compared to the rest of them. It inflicts a small bounce on the enemy. His grab combo of 3 punches is the same as Kiryu's, as is his heavy kick, though his throw animation has a little more judo flair than Kiryu's arm drag. He's got sway attacks that use his legs instead of his fists, as well as a double dodge that doesn't send you quite as far away as the Dharma Tumbler does, which lets you keep close to the enemy to resume your assault. His downed attack also uses his foot, and it doesn't have many afterframes, so you're usually safe to use this in a crowd and get away without taking a hit. He's got 2 heavy kicks and a running heavy, but no reverse heavy. Instead, while locked on, you can do a kick behind you to clear space or interrupt an attack. This is arguably more useful than a standard reverse hit, certainly more consistent to perform, and it speaks to how well Akiyama performs at managing his space. I just didn't use it much because I thought my timing was really shit, and I wasn't able to tell for sure whether it was just that there was no reverse heavy because my timing on that is shit. So, you won't see it very much. Talking of reverses, another thing he has are reverse light attacks, a first for this video series. If you input the opposite direction while doing a combo and hit square, Akiyama will perform one of 2 backhand attacks or the first hit of his slash kick combo. The second one has a wider range, but all of them are quick, sharp, and guaranteed to keep you safe from a surprise attack. The slash kick combo can also be redirected while doing it, which means that at no point is Akiyama truly vulnerable to anything. All of that said, the one thing that Akiyama has which Kiryu doesn't is the ability to string his light reversals into his combos without interrupting them. If you do a reverse light as Kiryu, your combo's basically ended, save for any finishers you want to do. With Akiyama, you can do his light reversal and continue through the rest of the combo, which is how most reversals would be handled in the series going forward. And while he lacks distinct reverse finishers, their similarity to the normal ones means that what you may lose in variety, you make up for in consistency and quick options to default to in a pinch. You will never need to worry about redirecting your attacks because Akiyama is always capable of fighting anywhere around him instantly. Of course, there is one important tool that takes Akiyama from in control of his spacing to in control of the entire battlefield, but before we get to that part of his identity, let's go over everything else he has in his pocket, because for as much utility as his base combo has, quite frankly, you ain't seen nothing yet. Going forward, I'm going to talk a lot more about the application of moves and the ways they play into Akiyama's greater combo game. This is something I haven't found terribly important to discuss in previous videos. Yakuza in general isn't a character action game, style is more of an optional thing, so I find my effort is better spent describing how moves work and how they build an aesthetic identity for the character in question. For Shinada and Tanimura, less people know how they work and have a harder time playing as them, so I wanted to give some insight there because I'm something of a specialist in those fields. For Saejima, his playstyle doesn't lend itself to a combo game at all, even though he definitely has one. Akiyama is where that changes. This is a character who was born to carry enemies across the arena, wall to wall, and eliminate health bars off a single hit with a kit designed specifically to turn small moments into battle-deciding turnarounds. As a good starting point, I mentioned earlier that you can unlock a second heavy kick. Not a second level to your charge heavy, but a second triangle input entirely. For everyone else, the heavy kick will either knock away or inflict a small bounce on the enemy, which itself can lead into a combo. With a second kick, Akiyama can both pick up a falling enemy and launch him further away than every other protagonist can, which is especially helpful for bringing an enemy closer to a wall. Talking of more than one kick, once that enemy is on the wall, Akiyama has other tools for extending a combo that would otherwise drop. Through his training with Saigo, he can unlock 2 extensions for his slash kicks, all of which are guaranteed to land on a wall-bounded enemy. While this alone is game-changing for raw damage, the most important Saigo unlock is his triple slash kick. I didn't go much into it earlier, but Akiyama can unlock a running triangle attack. On its own, this doesn't mean much, but it can be extended twice over. The first extension will launch the enemy straight up, which alone can be followed up on if your reflexes are sharp, but the second extension will inflict a small bounce on the enemy. From here, you're left actionable with enough time to continue your combo however you want. Most enemies are not worldly enough to actually block all 3 of these strikes, so if you want some cheese, this is where you're gonna find it. Then again, you won't really be in search of cheese with Akiyama. Much like everything else in his life, it's pretty much handed to him. His revelations alone house 3 of the most brainless heat actions in the series, one of which retaliates against a guard break, one of which retaliates against attacks from behind, and the last of which can be activated simply by running into crowds of 3 or more. He can inherit essence of pole dancing from Kiryu, which only requires being drunk and running at one enemy. Honestly, the only heat actions of his that aren't fine-tailored to covering your ass or being easily used in a pinch are his other inherited one, essence of jumping, and his wall heat action. This one is also inherited from Miyamoto Musashi, of all people. I think it suits him really well. The somewhat unprofessional look combined with the weaker hits coming from his hands works really well to sell someone who's not as experienced fighting with those hands, especially in close quarters. I do lament the lack of carrying over the back grab heat action, but it definitely doesn't suit Akiyama, so I'll let that one slide. On the less brain-dead side of things, assuming that these even count as heat actions, are Akiyama's special interactions with various people around Kamurocho. More than anything, these basically function as unique QTEs at the beginning of street fights. Some of them heal you, some of them do damage to enemies, some of them don't spawn because they suck, so I couldn't show them, and I spent like 30 minutes looking for them, but oh well. They are there. Some are more consistent to spawn than others. They are entirely dependent on where enemies themselves spawn for street fights, so make sure you don't want them too bad, or else the desire sensor fucks you over, I guess. Of course, I have yet to mention his cheesiest and most brain-dead options, the crush heat actions. Two of them are pretty situational, requiring you to stand near guardrails and poles, respectively, which are not common. It's the final one where things get stupid. Essence of Wall Crush requires that you stand near an enemy and a wall and hit triangle. That's it. For that measly excuse of a setup, you get a pretty decent chunk of damage, and for not even all of your active heat. Keep using it, especially by accident, because you couldn't prevent heat actions with L2 in this game, and you'll be rewarded with one of his 3 heat action extensions, the other 2 of which belong to his downed enemy heat action and Guardrail Crush. Even then, the upgraded version won't completely drain you, so you're free to keep accidentally using it over and over again. And even if it did require all of your heat, Akiyama is never too far away from a quick refill. He has 4 different taunts. His normal one for grabbed enemies, one for downed enemies, and one for him when he's downed. Hell of a reward for managing the battlefield, especially for a character who's built to manage the battlefield. Not to mention, he also has a rising kick, a breakfall recovery, and a sliding strike from a knockdown. So even if you feel like landing on the ground, that's 3 options, all of which cover different situations. Hell, if we're still talking about heat, he has access to the 2 best weapons for farming the stuff, nunchucks and kali sticks, with the unique moveset and heat action belonging to the latter. A combination of quick strikes and several of them per square press means you won't even have to use the special attack on circle to top yourself off, although it certainly does help. So basically, Akiyama can do anything he wants, whenever he wants, and he never has to be punished for it. He's even got a counter on triangle, on top of everything else, a counter attack. This man will only take a punch if you decide you want to. But you may be thinking, if you haven't played this game before, what if someone starts attacking him while he's in the middle of a combo, and a reverse attack isn't going to be quick enough to save him from that damage? At that point, he's bound to take some. Not so, my friend. Because it's high time we talk about the most important addition to Akiyama's moveset, the thing that takes him from powerful to broken, from the best style in Yakuza 4 to one of the most capable fighters in series history. In Yakuza 2, Kiryu can acquire eldritch knowledge by watching videotapes in a porn parlor, some of which he can acquire by exploring the world. One of these tapes, Space Ninja Man 3, gives him the Cancel Sway. This move allows him to dodge out of a light combo at the cost of heat. However, it doesn't actually require heat to use, so at worst you'll just have a tougher time getting into heat in the first place. This move turns any light combo into a potential stun lock for lesser enemies, and for bosses, it can be the difference between a tap and a whole health bar's worth of damage, if you use it correctly. In Kenzan, this move still existed, but I do not remember how you get it. In Yakuza 3, the Cancel Sway was locked behind the highest upgrade on the tech tree, and it requires Kiryu to remain out of heat in order to use it. For that technical downgrade, though, it received in turn the ability to cancel the afterframes of finishers, which allows you to keep enemies in an endless bounding combo if you find the right corner to trap them in. Because of this, the Calming Towel now has an even greater utility than it ever did before, turning it into a sign of combat prestige for those in the know. Still, some have said that this anti-heat requirement makes the ability somewhat useless. For them, Akiyama has the greatest gift: In Yakuza 4, Akiyama can unlock the cancel sway as it appeared in Yakuza 3, but with a further upgrade, he can nullify the no heat requirement. It is in this moment that you'll realize that Akiyama is no longer a martial artist, but a walking weapon of mass destruction. And it is in this moment that I now present you with a beginner's guide to Akiyama combos. As always, I do not claim to be among the highest skill level in any Yakuza game, but with these instructions, you should find yourself well on your way to mastering the cancel sway and creating your own combos. Soon enough, it'll come second nature. It'll feel easy, but as I'll explain in a bit, that is on purpose. The simplest setup is in square triangle, which crumples the enemy. From there, perform this series of inputs while making sure you're locked onto the enemy. Square, 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 forward sway, triangle, square, forward sway, triangle. Repeat those last three until you hit a wall, then finish out your combo with whatever finisher you like. 4 square 2 triangle should hit pretty consistently. If you want to up your combo game, you'll need to find yourself in a corner between 2 surfaces that won't give you a wall bound. Within this corner, you'll be able to use your side sway attacks to reset the enemy's bounding state to a point where you can safely start up a new combo. From there, you can basically do whatever you want. Of course, since you can cancel out of finishers, this also means you can knock an enemy up or away, chase after them with your forward sway attack, and then bound them to wherever you want. Even if some of the finishers don't inflict a very long combo starting state on the enemy, your triple dash kick should be able to pick up just about any kind of falling state you can put an enemy into. It's all a matter of timing. Get there fast enough, perform your inputs at the right moments, and you can do anything with Akiyama. Talking of picking enemies up and controlling where you send them, adding in reverse lights to your combo, the fist one specifically, can force a directional shift on the bounded enemy so that you can carry them across the room again, and in general will help you aim them toward a desired spot the more you get the hang of it. As you can see, I have not gotten the hang of it, as I've sourced much of this higher level footage from some very kind people in the No Damage community. I thank them profusely for letting me use their footage. You can find their YouTube channels in the description of this video, and alongside them is Curve Nasty Jr., who has some very informative guides that work far better as starting points for combat than these videos do. Mostly because these videos aren't really meant to be that. But those are, so if you're in search of a beginner's guide to Yakuza combat for any game in the series, give those a shot. What a good boy I am, shouting out a smaller, fledgling creator like this. You guys should like and subscribe for that. Anyway, in terms of esoteric tech, I don't really have much else to say. Akiyama specifically doesn't have much to him outside of what I've shown, though I can make up for not mentioning the weird alternate finisher input for Saejima now. It is very odd. Hit cross right after hitting triangle and he'll do a charged finisher without the charge. It even has different hit properties for the first and third ones. You can't do any of the second or third strikes after these weird finishers, but as it is, this is still very cool and weird. Saejima bonus video over. Let's go back to summarizing Akiyama. I hope you can see just how much this symbolism of Akiyama being the top dog in Kamurocho is reflected in his combat design. I will often praise Yakuza 4 to the high heavens for how intentionally its new protagonists are written and crafted, and it's for exactly these reasons. Akiyama is meant to represent the upper class, the elite, the people who have life served to them on a silver platter and lap it up like the gluttonous fiends they are. It gets to a point where they stop caring about the thing that keeps them at the top, whether that be Akiyama no longer valuing money as a thing that has any inherent worth, or the player doing their 10th wall-to-wall bounding combo of the evening just because they can. In both circumstances, your status of being at the top is something you'll come to take for granted, and by the end of the game, Akiyama is forced to learn that just because you've stopped seeing the things you stand on to be above everyone else, that doesn't mean they stop existing. Without all the money, without all the tech, without this amazing and intricate combat system, Akiyama isn't Akiyama. With it, he's one of the best things RGG Studios has ever created. So what if they tried doing exactly that? Stripping him of those identifying traits and making him another run-of-the-mill protagonist. That sound like a bad idea? I agree. And we wouldn't have to wait long to see why that is. Yakuza 5 strikes again, I fear. I mentioned in the Saejima video that the two main things that'll happen to anime characters who have completed their arcs are floundering and flanderization. Of the two, Akiyama falls more on the floundering side, and it's arguably worse. Where Saijima's story in Yakuza 5 sees him embodying this complete opposite role that he played in 4, from a stubborn, driven old man seeking out his proper station in life, to a sedentary monk who is happy to live the rest of his life isolated from those he cares about, even if it costs him his health and seemingly his life, Akiyama's story doesn't really exist at all. He's tacked onto Haruka's chapter as a vague explanation of why she's able to seek out the criminal elements in Sotenbori, and when he's not pushing the plot forward one fight at a time, he's spouting the game's themes like a broken faucet, constantly streaming this meaningless garbage about dreams and the people who work for them, and how Park was actually this paragon of morals and integrity because she worked for a dream, and how all that money fell out of the sky for her, Lily be damned, despite the fact that Park brought down herself, Haruka, and everyone else around her in order to achieve it. She can't even be blamed for inviting her death upon herself by fucking over Okita, the man who did nothing but demand to be compensated for his work and earned a trip to the hydraulic press for his trouble because of that goddamn dream. And then Haruka continues fucking herself over in Park's stead by pursuing that dream to its conclusion, then promptly dropping it because it's never what she wanted in the first place. Akiyama, despite having literally nothing to do with the plot of this game, gets dragged down so much just because he was tacked with the unfortunate role of explaining why the plot suddenly shifts from one about actual things and people and themes to one about a single word. He gets all of the most boring dialogue cutscenes in this game, he gets all of the worst boss fights, and he doesn't even get to maintain his status as the king of combos for his trouble. Unlike Saijima, these negative changes aren't due to things he gains, but rather things he loses. Chief among these losses is the cancel sway. Not because it's gone, but because it may as well be. Yakuza 5 manages buffering inputs for cancels in a very odd way, namely by not doing it. Because of that, you can cancel your light attacks just fine, but your finishers require frame-perfect inputs, or something close enough to that the difference is negligible. You know how there's frame-perfect bonuses for your base combo that you unlock at the end of the game? That's also how you cancel Akiyama's and Kiryu's finishers, and while I've spent time learning Kiryu's timings to the point that I can pretty handily cancel out of whatever I want, I have not done my due diligence for Akiyama, namely because you can do none of the things you could in Yakuza 4. Bounding combos, as they were, are essentially non-existent, save for some very specific tech involving hitting an enemy with an attack that doesn't put them into a grounded state pretty much instantly. From what I've gathered, basically any attack that isn't the first light will do, which, again, is a much simpler ask with Kiryu than Akiyama. In Yakuza 5, Wall Splats is the name of the game, and it is a very simple game, unless you're Kiryu and resplats come as natural as doing a heat action. That game is throw an enemy into a wall, or knock them into one in just the right way that they splat against it. From there, you can do a single attack, a heat action, if your character even has one, or attempt a short combo that ends with splatting them back into the wall. Of course, said character cannot have knockdown evasions or immunity, which means none of Akiyama's boss fights can be resplatted. And of course, the coolest combos require an enemy with a decent amount of health, so no street goons, which means at best you can do this in the Coliseum or in the Sotenbori Sky Finance location against that one random guy who just shows up and has basically become the go-to sparring dummy for people with brains fried enough to lab Akiyama in Yakuza 5 for fun. That's where you'll practice combos, and that's pretty much the only place you'll get to do them, too. Enjoy your scraps! Even outside of the bounding and cancel sway alterations, Akiyama's combo itself has been altered in such a way that prioritizes mashing over precise movements. His slash kick combo has been extended to hit over 20 times at max level, and thanks to his 3-square attack now having 2 hitboxes, it means that enemies will turn around even quicker during back combos than they already do, which Akiyama is not suited to keep going for extended periods of time because of the way that his sway attacks work. It's like he was specifically buffed for the Yakuza 4 engine and pace of combat, but then he was stuck into this game without any care for whether those buffs would actually help him in any way. But hey, it's Yakuza 5, so you sure are free to spam your square triangle and 2-square 2 triangle on grounded enemies as much as you like with no consequence. That makes up for the lack of combat depth, right? Hey, don't cry, baby, look at the shiny, look at the jangling keys! Aren't you happy with your cool new Yakuza game? If we're talking about jangling keys, though, easily the most egregious example of that is in Akiyama's Red Heat ability, the Launch Strike. I've spoken very negatively about this move in the past, and the fact that no one has ever questioned me on that or asked for clarification should speak volumes about how worthless this ability is. When in heat, he can launch enemies with a standing heavy or a running heavy. And that's specifically lesser enemies, and some random Coliseum bosses. Ogita will fall out of it quickly, Khone won't even exit the ground, and those are his only bosses, so poo on you. When you have an enemy in the air, you can jump up and kick them a bunch with square. Triangle will either end the combo, or if you hit it after relaunching the enemy, it'll do a flip into Hwaron grab and toss them behind you. That is it. That is literally it. Oh wait, excuse me, you can also launch enemies with 1 square 2 triangle in heat, so make sure you actually want to do that, or else you'll be accidentally doing this move even more than when you're just trying to kick them on the ground. Or, hey, the most useful tech in Yakuza 5, you can cancel out of the launch animation, or at least you could if the window for inputting them wasn't less than half a second. Some people can, though. Even outside of its ineffectiveness in battle, at the very least, I had observations about how Saijima's tiger puppetry doesn't fit a version of him that's supposedly weaker than Yakuza 4. I didn't really speak about Shinada's meteor tackle in a narrative sense, but it fits a character who's all about grabs, and everyone already knows about how Dragon Spirit fits Kiryu pretty well. So where does Long Strike fit into who Akiyama is as a character? I hate to say it, but I don't really see the link. And that's not even for the game's changed presentation of his character. It just doesn't work for him on a conceptual level. Hitting one enemy a bunch is just about the opposite of what Akiyama specializes in, but it's such a basic and boring explanation that it isn't worth elaborating on in any way. Do you want something that fits Akiyama? Look to Judgment or Dark Ties. Give him a move that sends him jumping off walls or off enemies. Keeps up his mobility while also giving him some kind of total intangibility, all without locking him into attacking one specific enemy. It feels so simple in hindsight, but from the perspective of Yakuza 5, I totally understand not knowing what to do with them. In that sense, it actually fits his presentation in this game really well. Talking of not knowing what to do with something, I hate to repeat a bit, but once again, I completely forgot about Affected Fight. I've already gone on record not liking this theme, and I guess it's about time I actually explain that. It's just Isolated Fight 2, which normally wouldn't be too much of an issue. I like that song. It's the fact that Akiyama already feels neutered to the point of feeling like a less functional and weaker Kiryu. Compared to Speedstar, this theme feels heavier, more dramatic, and a lot less original. All things I would say the same of for Akiyama in this game. I will say, one thing I like about this theme is that it elaborates on the angle of him taking up the role of Haruka's surrogate guardian, but there isn't enough done with that in the game itself to make that feel like a worthwhile choice. For God's sake, he and Haruka act like they already know each other in this game. Wouldn't it have been way cooler to see them actually meet for the first time and actually watch their personalities bounce off each other, instead of just getting straight into the story and having Akiyama act as an excuse for Haruka to go to all these shady, dangerous places and get into trouble? As it is, this just feels like the game admitting that Akiyama lacks a sufficient narrative and gameplay identity. He's just Kiryu again, but a little funkier. I mean, if you want a positive, the climax of the song is good. Everyone knows that. But that doesn't really make up for the lack of anything else that draws me to it. This is just a personal observation that I've had before, but Dynamic and Magnificent should have been Akiyama's theme in this game. You know, give it a little alteration to give it an intro that works with the long and short versions of Street Fight intros in 5, but that theme fits Akiyama so much better in the individual moment than Affected Fight does. And in that fact, Affected Fight also fits that fight with Khone better because he's protecting Haruka. You know, the thing that a surrogate Kiryu would do. So why didn't they just, switch these around? Whatever, dude. It's Yakuza 5. Who gives a shit? Getting back to gameplay, it is with all of that in mind that I will once again bring up the Calming Towel. What was once a symbol of someone with an acute knowledge of Yakuza 3's mechanics and equipment has now been downgraded to that thing I always use whenever I play Akiyama because I never want to be in heat in this game. He's got some cool new heat actions, one for launching an enemy at a skybound one, a cool custom one for the pole, but I never want to do any of them. Why should I, when half the time I'm gonna do a launch strike by mistake and end up following through on the combo because I feel committed to using it at this point? Hell, I can't even use my good collie sticks because I don't have enough weapon skill. So, if I'm ever playing as Akiyama, I simply equip the towel, hit the streets, and wish I was playing Yakuza 4 instead. How ironic that both he and Saejima ended up with heat items I keep equipped on them all the time, one that lets me constantly cheese the game, and another that limits me to the extent that I can actually play it how I want to. And much like Saejima, this would be Akiyama's final gameplay appearance in the series. However, unlike Saejima, who died in jail after Yakuza 5, we would see Akiyama one more time. And then another time in Infinite Wealth, but who gives a shit, I'm not talking about that game. Akiyama would get one final shot in the spotlight to make his presence mean something. And at least in my opinion, what we got was the best possible swan song for this character. One thing that people tend to overlook regarding Akiyama's character in Yakuza 4, especially when compared to his negligence with money and his obsession with being a detective, is the way that he idolizes Kiryu. His entire relationship with Arai in 4 is based on him viewing Arai as a sort of second coming of the Dragon of Dojima for Kamurocho, which lost its way after the King of the Concrete Jungle left for grander ventures. That's one of the few things I'm willing to give Yakuza 5, for as weird and out of left field as that moment at the end is, Akiyama being publicly acknowledged as a legend of the city is a decent way of following up on this character beat. By the time of Yakuza 6, though, that status has come back to haunt him. Having to contend with being a target of the criminal element in the city, especially when that criminal element is explicitly hunting him down to kill him, is not something he's built for, nor something he has the capability to fight back against on his own. So, when he's struck down to his lowest, put back in a position he hasn't been for 10 years at this point, the one thing that brings him back into his own is getting a visit from the man he knows can set Kamurocho back on the right path.
Akiyama ka?
Kiryu さん。
久しぶりだな。
いや、まあどうぞ座ってください。見ての通り大したお構いはできませんけど。
Things like this are where Yakuza 6 shines the brightest, giving the few legacy characters it includes in its story meaningful, genuine, and most importantly, believable interactions with Kiryu. The ways he's touched so many people's lives is something that's pretty much entirely lost on him. But rather than force Kiryu into 10,000 sub-stories where someone he met for 3 seconds one time tells him that life is worth living and he should stop dying, Yakuza 6 instead chooses to steer its main narrative into directions that let him simply be around the people that care about him the most, for as few of those people are left at this point. The sub-stories are mostly for following up on the consequences of his actions and letting him see the minutiae of his short but tumultuous time at the top of the town. The main story is about bringing Kiryu closer to not just old friends, but new friends who he can let his guard down around and actually talk to about how he's feeling and what he's been through. And nobody gets this treatment better than Akiyama. Getting back to him, it isn't long before Kiryu's punished for seeking out old connections. However, instead of letting him wallow in guilt, Akiyama steps up to the task and shows him that just because Kiryu brings danger where he goes, doesn't mean the people he brings it to are incapable of either protecting themselves or assisting him through his own struggles. While that isn't a lesson he internalizes by the end of the game, it's one the game is giving him nonetheless, especially from Akiyama. After making the effort to seek him out and request his help solving Haruka's accident, something that I can only imagine meant something to Akiyama on multiple levels, he pulls through for Kiryu. He's the one thinking about the consequences of Kiryu's actions ahead of time. He's the one breaking his cover to meet with Kiryu in order to help get him closer to Haruto's father. He's the one who pulled up on the Millennium Tower with Kiryu for a 3rd time just because someone he personally wants to obliterate might be at the top, and Akiyama's willing to help give him that opportunity. Hell, for 2 of the 3 fights with Ed, the character who exists to test the bonds between Kiryu and those close to him, subtly hinted at by his boss theme literally being called Enduring Bonds, Akiyama is not only present, he's essential to achieving success. The only one he isn't present for is Kiryu pushing through Yuta's active suicide attempt to snap him out of his stupor and make him accept his status as Haruto's father. If that doesn't tell you how deeply Akiyama values Kiryu and wants to help him however he can, and in turn how much Kiryu values Akiyama, I don't know what will. But, of course, that's not the most important role Akiyama plays in this game. At the end of Chapter 2, right as Kiryu steals his will and resolves to illegally take Haruto out of child protective custody, Akiyama steps up and tells him this isn't right, and he won't let Kiryu put himself and his grandson into harm's way like this. At least, not without a fight. In a rare moment of self-awareness, Kiryu straight up admits that he knows this isn't the right thing to do, but backed into a corner, left with no other options, the only thing he knows how to do is push back against adversity. It just happens that right now, adversity is one of his last friends who isn't dead or in prison. Not like that would stop him, though. And that's what makes this fight so good. In this moment, Akiyama isn't Kiryu's friend, and Kiryu doesn't care that he's Akiyama's friend. Right now, Akiyama is nothing more than an obstacle in his way, and the only way forward is through.
俺しかいねえ。
桐生さん。
お前はどうしても邪魔するって言うなら、もう話し合いの余地はねえ。そこをどけ。秋山！
くそ、なんで俺がこんな目に。
Again, this isn't subtle. That's literally the name of the generic boss theme for this game. And it's a good theme, too. Really good blend of the game's rock, orchestral, and electronic styles of music. Probably the best opening to any generic boss theme in this series. Enough about the presentation around it, though. Unlike Saejima, I actually have a moveset to talk about here. And it's a wonderful reimagining of Akiyama's kit from previous games. He's got a couple basic combos. One of 3 kicks, and one of 2 kicks, 2 punches, and a final kick. Finally seeing him use his fists in a basic combo is really cool. Speaks to how much effort he has to put in to even stand a chance against Kiryu. He also has a simple standing kick, a side kick which knocks over and has a follow-up if blocked or dodged, and a down kick. Once in heat, he'll unlock evasive strikes for at least 3 directions. I know he can also do a taunt where he just begs Kiryu to calm down, but I only ever got regular taunts from him, which I didn't even know was possible, so maybe that's only on lower difficulties. All told, it's a simple moveset, but the fact that most of these moves are completely original animations fleshes him out so much. I don't want to fight a player moveset that wasn't made to be fought against. I want to fight a wholly original one. And even though I'm obviously super over-leveled in this footage, he feels properly balanced for an early game boss fight. I only wish there was an optional harder rematch with him later on, maybe in some kind of climax battle or something, and sad to say, we're not getting those back anytime soon. Unless we do, but we won't. I'm locking that in. But yeah, that's Akiyama in Yakuza 6. A severely overlooked appearance which adds a lot to both his and Kiryu's characters, and brings some much needed charm and familiarity to a story that often feels like it's ignoring Kiryu's legacy in order to focus on the new villain of the week. I hope this little overview of Akiyama's involvement helps to explain why he occupies the role that he does, and more importantly, why he wasn't celebrated more than he was. This isn't Akiyama's game. He's just a side character in Kiryu's life story. To make his presence any larger would take away from the fact that his presence here is for more than fan service. If you want Akiyama fan service, go play Ishin or Infinite Wealth, or some other game where the story doesn't actually matter compared to the references. Okay, that may be too harsh. Ishin does at least have some thematic stuff it's working towards with the nature of identity. It's fuck Infinite Wealth to the day I die. I spent way longer talking about Yakuza 6 than I intended to, but considering we're in desperate need of some good RGG narratives these days, I figured it's only right that I spotlight one of their better ones. Even if you don't like the main story of the Song of Life, I think it's an objective observation to say that the way it handles characters like Akiyama was a breath of fresh air compared to where he'd been previously. Talking of, Let's go ahead and get those previous appearances ranked up, starting with Yakuza 4. Presentation, 3 out of 3. Akiyama's visual design, combat design, audio design, every facet of his appearance in this game is a testament to how much work must have gone into writing the 3 new protagonists. With Akiyama, though, this might be the best of the lot. He works on every conceivable level, and the game starting out with him is just one of the many things that makes Yakuza 4 the tour de force of a narrative that it is. Utility, 3 out of 3. Akiyama will never meet a challenge in this game that he cannot dodge behind, launch, and combo into the corner for an infinite setup. And even if you're willing to play nice with the enemies, he has such a perfect assortment of tools at his disposal that you'll never feel like you have too many to choose from at any given moment. Every attack, every taunt, every option has its place in combat, and you'll regularly get opportunities to use them as you see fit. Fun, 3 out of 3. Playing as Akiyama never gets old. There's not a single circumstance in this game where I feel bored playing as him. When I play as Akiyama, I feel young and light on my feet. I spring from enemy encounter to enemy encounter. I love my quick step cancel. I love my heat actions. When you play as Akiyama, you'll dodge and strike and reversal and defeat your enemies with great enthusiasm. This is a special game. Akiyama is a feeling. Ludonarrative synchronicity. Not once while you're playing as him will you forget that Akiyama is the smarmy, sarcastic, overly confident to the point of self-endangerment loan shark that he is. Likewise, you'll never forget that he is all of those things for a reason. He's got a kick to back up every word that comes out of his mouth, and once you've got a hold of his combat game, so will you. This is it, fellas and fellaettes. Our first 10 of the series, and who better? Honestly. You had to know this was coming, seriously. If you couldn't predict Akiyama getting a perfect score, then I'm frankly convinced you haven't played the game for yourself yet. Then again, this is only for Yakuza 4. We've got a whole other game to consider here, and suffice it to say, it's not gonna rank quite as high. Presentation, 2 out of 3. For the last time, at least for a while, Yakuza 5 is an ugly fucking game. The lighting sucks, the textures are gross, the heat aura is pathetic, and it has some of my least favorite looking heat actions in the series. But even so, the fact remains that Akiyama looks and performs as he did in 4. He didn't get an outfit downgrade like Saejima or a design change that I'm not a fan of like Kiryu, and that's referring to the skin, not the outfit. I do like the taxi uniform. Akiyama just looks like he did in 4, but in 5, and that makes it look worse here. Not to mention his moveset looks the same as it did, and it didn't really need a touch-up for this engine, so I'm fine with it. Utility, 1 out of 3. This is a compound issue between the reduced utility of certain moves, the new cheese favoring keeping enemies on the ground with a limited number of finishers, and the enemies now being much more defensive than they were in 4. Opening them up isn't impossible or anything, but with how many more there are in this game, it's not as simple of a task to do so. Not to mention Launch Strike not helping much in any given combat scenario, his bosses reducing his worthwhile options even further than they've already been, heat locking you out of some of your most useful abilities. You stack all of that on top of each other, and you end up with a character who just plain out isn't suited for Yakuza 5's combat. He can get by, he's not totally helpless, but Akiyama will never thrive in this setting, at least not as he is in the final product. Fun, 1 out of 3. All of that said, there is something worth sticking around to play with here, at least in my opinion. No, it's obviously not as fun as 4. No, it won't be as intuitive to figure out what works. But if you're willing to play the game in Akiyama's ideal form, i.e. Calming Towel and some weapons he can actually use, I think you'll find a captivating and worthwhile challenge. Of course, he would still benefit from a more varied selection of battles and bosses to use them in, so because of that, he gets dropped down to a 1. If he had good bosses, he'd probably be a 2. Quite unfortunate how these things turn out. Ludonarrative synchronicity. So this is kind of an interesting case. Usually I'd be a little more confident in saying whether or not playing as the character accurately reflects their actions and personality in the story, but I really have nothing to go off of in this game. Akiyama is at his least in so many ways here, arguably most of all in the character sense. He just doesn't feel at all like the same man he was in 4. Not for having changed, but by being replaced with an exposition machine wearing his skin. I couldn't tell you whether he's intended to be stronger or weaker here. He has more moves, but he's balanced in such a way where he's got the most difficult gameplay segments, at least before the finale. And even there, he could be argued to still have the hardest final boss of the lot. I couldn't tell you whether he's intended to have changed very much as a person between entries, because for all intents and purposes, he's just the same guy from 4, but louder and less interesting. Really, it all comes down to whether you think the launch strike fits him as a character. If it does, then his combat feeling so balanced around it might work for you in a narrative sense, and if it doesn't, then it's just the weird and unbalanced gimmick that it is, taking up way too many slots in your move list. For me, it doesn't, so I'm inclined to withhold this point. But I could see the argument being made that he does deserve it. So, at least for me, Akiyama gets a 4 out of 10 in this game. It was gonna be 5 before I cut a point from fun for having no good boss fights, so there you go. Slides into 7th place between Baljima and Mad Dog K2. And there you have it. Save for the various versions of Dragon Style and the Yakuza 0 styles, that's every style in the main series games. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with this. Feels like something of an accomplishment. So, between this and finally having a 10 out of 10 entry to cap things off, I'm going to put Style Rank on hold for a little bit. Officially this time, not because I'm just going to go on break for 3 weeks and not tell anyone. Not to mention, I'm finally giving it its own proper playlist on the channel so everyone can easily find and watch them in order. And of course that means they're going to watch the agent video, they're going to fucking tell me that it's not Muay Thai. Who gives a shit? It's there now. Not to mention, it's been over a year since the Tanimura video, which remains my most popular video on the channel. I'd like to thank you all very kindly for that. It's a bit rough for multiple reasons looking back on it, but nevertheless, over 50,000 people decided to give it a watch for some significant amount of time, and that is incredible. Thank you. Although, talking of the Tanimura video, it is about time that I close the book on a somewhat divisive part of that video. I got a recent comment from someone who was able to traverse the Japanese internet better than I was, and came back with some legit-looking receipts concerning the other Narimiya allegations I briefly went over in that video. I feel like I made it about as explicit as possible that I chose to talk about it because I wanted someone with more context and information to present it, since I was unable to find it in my attempts at finding literally any other article to go over the situation besides the one containing said accusations. But nevertheless, someone has presented evidence and context, and I am grateful for that. Perhaps the harsh words in this comment are due. Maybe I missed something that was glaringly obvious to anyone with context or the ability to search that side of the internet better than I. And if I did, then I profusely apologize for that. I promise, I was coming from a place of good intentions. Considering where the series is at now with a certain Teruyuki Kagawa, I hope that you can at least understand what I meant then when I said that we need to listen to accusations, even if they end up being false, because they might open the lid on the real scumbags in the industry. Regardless, I'm pinning the comment to make sure that anyone wanting this information can easily find it. Also, may as well clarify it here so that there aren't any further confusions, I am bi. I was saying in the video that I was unhappy that it was through this scandal that I learned Narimiya was also bi, because I would rather have found that solidarity through his own voluntary coming out and embracing of that side of himself, but that could also easily have been my own poor wording, so I am sorry for implying that his queerness made the situation worse in some way. That is not at all what I wanted to convey. Anyway, back to the main subject at hand. There you have it. This has been Style Rank for the time being. I want to take the energy and research I've put into this series and apply that to other facets of Yakuza, mainly thematic and narrative analysis, so hopefully you'll stick around to see where this newfound freedom ends up taking me. There's a particular game I think deserves some time in the spotlight right now, so you might see a video about that sometime soon. Sonic will probably come first though. Anyway, I'm gonna cut this off here before I end up rambling for another 5 minutes and giving out a plan that immediately gets ruined because of some unforeseen circumstances that I can't account for. Special thanks as always to the patrons. Oh boy, it's been a while since I said these ones. Jestv, Hashbear, Indolent Lard, Khone, and Loki. And to everyone else, I hope you've enjoyed Style Rank up to now. It'll be back someday. But for the moment, I hope you have a good day. Take care of yourself.